Alberta's proposed budget is here, and it includes a tax cut as promised by the United Conservative Party government in the last election. That is an 8% new tax bracket, and it applies to income that is taxable under $60,000. It should save each person who earns that much money about $750 per year. However, there is also a tax increase on education property taxes. I'll get to that in a minute. With this ever-evolving threat of tariffs from the United States, the government had this tricky task of trying to predict the unpredictable. And that uncertainty led the finance minister to table the government's first deficit budget since the year 2020. Finance Minister Nate Horner says it was extremely tough to know how to plan.
I don't know if there will be more certainty in a month or 2 months or three. We thought it prudent to, stick with our timeline and provide the most reasonable case that we could.
Now, the government is doing this by putting a $4 billion contingency cushion in the budget. That's twice as much as the existing budget year. Horner says this is to give him the flexibility to react to surprises. So that could be more money for unemployment programs, more money for natural disasters, or additional collective bargaining agreements with public sector workers. Finance officials are also making some assumptions about how the tariffs will affect Alberta. They're assuming that there will be an average of 15% tariffs on goods, considering that tariffs could be on and off throughout the year, and also the 10% tariffs as signaled by Donald Trump on oil and gas exports. They're also expecting lower oil and gas revenues for the government and potential job losses. Horner says he was reluctant to run a deficit, but it was necessary to try and catch up with the population growth that Alberta has experienced over the last few years and continue funding these public services they're responsible for, like health and education. So why spend $1.2 billion more on a tax cut during a deficit? Horner says that he's worried about tariffs affecting everyday Albertans as well as the government coffers.
We think it's important right now to provide them with some affordability tools to try to withstand this with us.
However, to help fund that growing school system, education property taxes are going to be going up for the next 2 years for property owners. How much you're going to pay depends on where you live. We heard that for a median homeowner in Edmonton, that would be about $92 more per year. And in Calgary, you're looking at $239 more per year. Now, the NDP says that those property tax hikes are one of several ways that this budget does not address affordability for Albertans. NDP leader Naheed Nenshi says that there's no plan to deal with the rising costs of housing and utilities.
This is not about Donald Trump or tariffs. This is about the inability of this government to manage its own fiscal house. Even if there were no tariffs, even if somehow we skated free of the tariffs, we would still have a $3 billion deficit this year. I have never seen a government waste money like this.
Nenshi says that the government does not have a plan to deal with these looming tariffs, especially in the agriculture sector, and rising unemployment that they're expecting in Alberta. And the government is proud that it's finally fulfilled its election promise of this tax cut. The NDP says that tax cut is worth about $2 per day. Janet French, CBC News, Edmonton.